Hello there, Dead and Lovely listeners, and welcome to Dead and Lovely, your favorite horror movie podcast, here with your host, Uncle Ben Eller, and my main man over here on the West Coast. Who is it over there on that end?
Hollywood Steve Spratling. Ow!
Are you like wolf packing over there?
Yeah. Conan's here. Six, is that what X-Pac went by when he was in WCW?
That's correct, and I found it ironic because he started off as the 1-2-3 kid, and 1-2-3 adds up to 6.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I hope that was like an inside math joke.
I think it was.
I also hope that it just
so.
sailed over all those meathead wrestlers' heads. Like they just totally didn't get it.
Right. Like he would try to explain it. He'd be like, see, because when you add 1 and 2...
Well, I don't know, brother. I don't really...
No, but okay. So, like, you take the numbers and you put them to... Yeah, okay, weights. Like you put weights together, right? Wait.
Like when to put a 20 on a 30, brother. Arr.
Right, yeah. So you're talking about lifting weight. All right, cool. That's a cool name.
Now I can relate to this. How's that West Coast treating you?
Oh, it's great. The weather is phenomenal. Been walking my dog. She is shedding like crazy because it's getting warmer. Yeah, pretty great out here in the West Coast. How about that East Coast?
It's going good over here, man. It's starting to get pretty nice. It's that good time to have them winders open and flip flops on.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I had a minor flip flop injury today.
Oh no.
That's just related to being a hillbilly piece of shit like myself over here in Tennessee. So I got a new guitar and I'm starting to refinish it, and I'm removing the paint on it with a heat gun, which is basically it's like a blow dryer that would actually peel your scalp off, is what a heat gun is.
Okay.
And it does really great to remove thick polyurethane paint. I've never used one before. And so I'm out here on the porch. I've got the guitar on the porch, and I've got the heat gun plugged up. And whenever you blow the finish off with the heat gun, the paint just kind of like blows off in pieces and chips. And of course, because I'm an idiot, I'm wearing flip-flops. And a napalm-like piece of oh my god, paint just like landed like on my toe.
Ooh.
It burnt a hole through it. It's pretty terrible. It's not my proudest moment.
Now, in my mind, I was imagining you with the heat gun and the paint chips flying off. That it was sort of like Thor's hammer, Mjolnir, being forged.
It's precisely like that.
Is it? Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right. Good. Mm-hmm. And I would like to imagine. I can't remember who forged his hammer, but I'd like to imagine that he also got a hole through his toe with a big spark coming off the hammer.
And he was like, "God damn!"
Yeah, that's how he sounded.
God
he
damn.
was up there just in Asgard, and he was like, "Oh god damn!"
You been watching anything good on that television?
Well, yeah. Per your suggestion, I started watching Preacher.
Fuck yeah!
Which,
what do you think?
Really enjoy it.
Yes.
I really like it.
How many episodes in are you?
4. I watched through episode 4. So, really like it. I love the guy who plays his friend Cassidy.
Yeah, dude, that's my guy. He's awesome.
He was in an episode of Ripper Streets a few years ago.
I've never seen that.
And Ripper Streets it's pretty good. It's enjoyable. But in his episode, he was so scuzzy looking. And seeing him in this, like, he plays scuzzy really well.
Yeah.
Yep.
I really enjoy it, man. I think we're about like maybe 6 or 7 episodes in. I'm really, really, really enjoying oh damn it, what's his name? Jackie Earl Haley.
As Odin, whatever his last name is.
He owns the meat, the mysteriously named Meat and Power Company.
Yes. How does that work?
Dude, like every time he's on screen, I'm like, oh, that's Maynard James Keenan. Oh no, it's not. Because he looks exactly like fucking Maynard. It's crazy, dude. Small hands. He's got very small mitts.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a sore subject, with our hair president. So, and I know he's a listener. He will tweet about this. He'll probably delete it quickly, and people will be like, he didn't tweet about it, but he will.
He's over there throwing shade at that dead and lovely. We've been watching Preacher, which is fucking awesome. I'm really, really enjoying it. And again, I've not read the comics, so I don't exactly know how it compares.
I haven't either.
But I'm definitely going to after watching this.
Yeah.
I just sat down and watched, it's a little Star Wars story called Rogue One.
Oh, yeah. I saw Rogue One a couple of weeks ago. And how did you feel about it?
I love it. Of course, I saw it in the theaters like twice whenever it was in theaters, but it just came out on Blu-ray not too long from when this was recorded, so we just got it. We've been watching it and stuff. Well, we watched it tonight anyway. I fucking love it. I think it's awesome. I think it's great that it is not a spick and span, clean, hero cowboy rides off into the sunset story.
I think it's awesome. Yeah, I like that a lot about it too, and I actually didn't have as much of a problem as some people have with just how inept everyone seems to be at shooting them. Yeah. When they're all like so easily like open to be shot. I actually feel like Rogue One is kind of like a legend that would be told, like the story of how it all happened. Right. It would be like a legend in the way that people would tell it. It would be like he just walked through the phaser blasts and things, and
that's a cool way to put it. It'd be like a story that like people in the rebellion would tell to inspire and stuff like that.
Yeah, going into it, like as a fan, you hope nobody comes out of it okay, like, because it would be like, well, we've seen what happens after this, and they weren't there, so you just expect everyone's going to die. Yeah. But the way that they paid service to fandom, but also made the characters interesting. I mean, some of them were a little flat. Certainly, Alan Tudyk stole the show for sure. Oh yeah. But it was good. I liked it. It was an enjoyable movie.
I too, man. It's a really good watch. Yeah, I watched that. I'm trying to think of anything else recently that I checked out. I think that's been the majority of it. I'm pretty busy working on a lot of music stuff lately, so I think that's kind of been the majority of my watching. But I did recently watch a little flick that we're going to chat about today called Slumber Party Massacre from the year 1982, the year of our Lord.
The year of our Lord, 1982. Slumber Party Massacre. This was my suggestion. If anyone out there is angry at Ben, stop being angry at Ben.
Lay off.
Tweets. We get your tweets. Steven's the best part. Yeah. Ben shouldn't even talk. Yeah. Get out of here. Yep. They say those things.
It's cold.
It's cold, y'all. And I'm going to tell my mom to stop doing it.
Was this the first time that you watched this flick?
No, it is not. I have seen this movie several times. As a Ute, I saw it. We rented it. We rented it several times. I would say probably because of the boobies.
It has plenty of boobs.
And we'll talk about that and why that might be the case. And also the sequel to this movie, which I do want to talk about a little bit at some point.
Yes, because I saw, like last night, I was watching through some YouTube reviews of a couple of people talking about, their kind of take on this flick and stuff like that. And they showed a few quick segments from Slumber Party Massacre 2. And I was like, what the living fuck is this?
Yeah. It's crazy.
Awesome.
It's crazy.
Maybe we'll talk about that at the tail end of it after we go through the historic part 1.
Right. This movie, for sure, I'm not going to claim it's a great movie.
Right.
But this movie has a lot of value as a historical artifact.
Yeah, that sounds very accurate.
Yeah. This movie is the first slasher that I could find that was directed by a woman.
Right.
And written by a woman.
Right.
the director of this, Amy Holden Jones, I think stands out as having the most responsibility for the final product, because Rita Mae Brown, who wrote the script, she kind of disavows it, and according to Amy Holden Jones, basically she rewrote the whole thing.
Really?
Yeah. So she basically just took a script that already existed, and she shot the first couple of scenes and showed it as a short to Roger Corman.
The historic Roger Corman.
Yeah. I don't want to make the mistake of talking about an important female director and overshadowing her by talking more about maybe someone who helped her along the way. But Roger Corman was a big part of a lot of filmmakers getting their start. And most of those people worked in these schlocky sort of slasher movies or exploitation films that showed boobs.
Right.
So what he did was he would give a young filmmaker a chance with something like this that he knew that he could make with a real low budget, and then he could sell it to like drive-ins and places like that, and he'd make his money back plus some.
Right.
And then he would use that money to finance bigger pictures, or also to distribute art films from other countries, Kurosawa films, things like that.
Which, you know, kind of what you're telling me here, where you're talking about a male-dominated field using a woman to achieve what they ultimately want, is profoundly relevant to this movie.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It's a real life imitating art, imitating life kind of scenario, isn't it?
Yep. And this was Amy Holden Jones's first shot. Mm-hmm. And if you compare this, say, to the career of Catherine Bigelow, right, who also directed a low-budget film like this, it starred Willem Dafoe, and did okay in the theaters, and sort of gave her the go-ahead in a lot of people's minds to be able to direct a bigger film. And that's what this did for Amy Holden Jones. It just showed she can direct a film, she could handle a simple script. And so she got more chances after this. One of those chances was right after this, she directed Love Letters, which she wrote, and it starred Jamie Lee Curtis, which Love Letters was her first film outside of horror where she got to be the star.
Wow.
So Amy Holden Jones gave Jamie Lee Curtis, this opportunity, and Amy Holden Jones was getting this opportunity. And then after that, she ended up butting heads with Samuel Goldwyn Mayer Jr., who at that time was, I believe, in his 70s, and probably wasn't used to a woman insisting on directing a script that she wrote. But Amy Holden Jones wrote Mystic Pizza.
Okay.
And she insisted on directing it. Samuel Meyer sued her for the script and tried to only pay her $5,000. Eventually, she got paid for the film, but she didn't get to direct it. And it kind of fucked up her career as a director after that. So this is an interesting tale of one man who made a choice to help a female director get into a male-dominated field, and another producer who came along and basically derailed that career. So
wow.
Yeah.
Again, strangely appropriate for this movie.
Yeah. So I think this is like a really important artifact for horror movie buffs. Like, you should know this movie for sure, and its history.
Let me put something out here as we get into this movie and a lot of the subtext that goes throughout this flick. I listen to a lot of other podcasts, and I'm always trying to scope out a lot of other, like, horror and horror related podcasts and stuff to listen to. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of them that are like, I don't mean to just talk some shit about some folks right now, Steve. I don't want to talk some shit. But there's a lot of them that are like really misogynistic.
Yeah,
I don't
that's
exactly
true.
know what the deal is, but like I've listened to a bunch where it's seriously just like what our commander in chief might call locker room talk. And I want our listeners to know that me and Steve here, we're some we're some 21st century down with the ladies kind of cats.
I'm from the future. I'm from the 23rd century.
Holy fucking shit.
Let me just ruin it for you guys. There's more misogyny then, but it's all contained in one little bubble.
Oh.
And we watch them battle it out for supremacy.
Now that I can get into.
Yeah, it's fun.
But me and Steve here, we're all about the power to the ladies.
Yes.
It's not really. I don't know. I just feel like putting that out there because there's so much of this stuff, and there's so much of the genre that I think is very much dominated by, bro dudes that just want tits and ass and stuff like this. And
yeah,
I just want to put it out there that ain't our scene, yo. That ain't me.
Yeah, and that's certainly not why we would choose this movie.
And
for sure.
And I'll also say about this movie that, okay, I was trying to explain this to my wife earlier because she was like, how was the movie that you watched and stuff? And I was like, well, it's pretty bad, but it's one of those movies that is way more fun to retrospectively like talk about and think about than it is to watch.
Yeah.
Like watching it isn't necessarily very fun, but thinking about it afterwards and kind of talking about it like we're going to today is definitely way more fun.
It's for sure.
There is a massive amount of subtext in this movie, and I feel like whoever wrote the script, it's almost like maybe the actors or maybe the I don't know. It seems like a lot of people in the production didn't really pick up on the subtext and just didn't really know exactly what they were doing.
Right. It was shot on a very tight budget and a very small schedule. Yeah, not everybody really. I know that they sold the film as a different title to the actors. It was something a little more like don't open the door or something like that.
Okay.
So the actors, certainly didn't know exactly what they were involved in, and also, if you look at the careers of the people involved, very few of the people involved in this movie did anything else. So,
well, it kind of reminds me of the stories that you see about Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, which is widely known as kind of like, the gay Elm Street, where a lot of the people involved with the production, including the director, just claimed to be completely oblivious about the kind of gay erotic subtext throughout the script.
Yeah.
And they just made this movie not really knowing that, oh, this is gay stuff? Like, I didn't even notice. I feel like there's a lot of stuff in this movie that was probably like that. And in some ways, I like it that it was made that way because it's like, it's subtle and it's stuff that probably a lot of people wouldn't really think much of. And I probably wouldn't like it if all the subtext was delivered, way more on the nose and just explicit and boom in your face. I don't know. But like I said, definitely a movie to watch just to talk about and riff on. Not necessarily a fun watch.
I think there's some fun to it. This movie was scored by Amy Holden Jones's brother, Ralph Jones, on a $100 Casio MT30.
He was rocking that sick Casio rig.
Yeah, I had one of those when I was a youngster.
Holy shit.
Yeah, so, and you know what? Bravo. You think you did a pretty good job. It's for a very low-budget horror movie. The soundtrack, at no point did the score ever stick out to me as terrible.
That's true. Yeah, I can't really think of any part where it was like, yeah, no.
Yeah.
So there is that.
So, yeah, good job. This movie, the killer is talked about every time the radio comes on.
Yeah.
And for some reason, the radio comes on a lot.
Yeah, it does. It's always like, oh, killer escapes, yada yada. Like every
the
time.
Killer, his name is Russ Thorne, and he apparently murdered 5 people back in the day.
Yeah.
Little inside scoop, the original 3 scenes that Amy Holden Jones shot were the 5 kills that Russ Thorne was supposedly put in jail for.
Really? Back in 1969 when he did
that original 3 scenes was apparently there was a tarot card scene and some hippies, and it was, I don't think there was a drill involved, but anyway, so yeah, Russ Thorne, he's escaped the mental hospital much like one Michael Myers.
Or one Sirius Black. Ooh.
Oh.
I mean,
what if it is Sirius Black? Have you ever thought about that?
I mean, I didn't see Buckbeak anywhere on the premises, but that might be a deleted scene kind of thing.
I mean, this is after Harry would have been marked, right? 82.
It's true.
Would have been Sirius just out on a girl killing bender.
And really, like, honestly, the plot and stuff of this movie is so simplistic that I feel like we're probably gonna end up skipping over some parts. I know that
right, yeah.
Usually on the show here we kind of go through the movie kind of shot by shot, but there's so many parts in this movie. Like, I'll just tell you guys, like, whenever we watch the flicks, we make notes and stuff, and I just kind of write out notes and then kind of review them before we do the show. And I kind of like cross out anything that isn't necessarily that relevant. There is so much stuff crossed out on my notes where it's just like, oh, Valerie hears a noise. Oh, Courtney hears a noise. Oh, Diane hears a noise. It's just, there's a lot of stuff that's kind of crossed out. So there'll probably be some things that we kind of skip over here. Because, like, honest to God, the whole plot of the movie could be summed up as killer escapes, girls have a slumber party, killer goes after girls. That's it.
Yeah. Well, our main girl, I mean, it's hard to say main girl because there are kind of 2 main girls, but the first main girl we see is Trish. And we almost immediately see her with her shirt off. Now, this is an interesting question my wife asked me. My wife asked me when we watched this together. Mm-hmm. She said, "You said a woman directed this?" And I said, "Yeah." And she was like, "Why are there so many boob shots?"
Yes.
So here's why. Roger Corman, when he funded these little small horror movies and exploitation movies, he required nudity.
Really?
He didn't require sex. He didn't think sex drove people to the theaters. But nudity, if you were going to see some boobs, people would go to the drive-in to see it. So
if you boob them, they will come.
Yeah, so there are 3 scenes in this movie where it's just boobs and leering boob shots, and there's no, like, nothing is happening. There's no exposition occurring.
No, there's no reason.
Yep, just boobs. And that is because Roger Corman required it.
Here's an interesting thing that I found about the intro of the movie, because, like you said, the intro basically shows, the intro of the movie starts off with a girl waking up and her radio alarm thing's going off saying, "Oh, Russ Thorne killer is on the loose again." And she gets out of bed and we see her boobs and stuff. And an interesting point is that we see her naked before we even know her name.
That's true.
It's only like 2 scenes later when her parents are pulling out of the driveway that they're like, "Oh, Trish, yada yada." It's like, so we've seen her naked before we even know her name, which I think is one of those things that, again, I think so much of this movie is about the male, I don't know, sexual drive and libido and stuff like this. And I think so many guys notice a woman's body before they even think of her name or note. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and that's. I actually think the shots where we see boobs that are just, sort of random out there, I think Jones did a good job of using them to make some small points, and I think that is what this one makes. She shows our protagonist naked before we ever learn her name. I think she is pointing to that. I mean, she knows she has to show boobs because Corman's requiring it, so why not do it that way?
There you go. And so basically we see her, and she also goes and she throws away, she like has a trash bag, and she's throwing away a bunch of her toys, like stuffed animals and Barbies and things like this. She's throwing away the symbols of her girlhood because she is a woman now. She's like a 32-year-old woman, but
she's playing 18, I think.
Yes, which is again another theme through the movie that I think is blatantly made to make the male viewer feel dirty.
Yeah.
More on that later.
Yeah. So Trish, we're also introduced to Mr. Content, who is her neighbor, who for some reason is played like he might be the killer a couple of times.
Yeah, the kind of slight fake out.
Yeah, but if you listen to the radio, which again is on all the time, we know that Russ Thorne is the one we're rated, and we actually see Russ Thorne pretty early in the film. So I don't know why they did the fake outs with the neighbor. Yeah,
exactly. There's so many things like that in this movie where it's like, oh yeah, psych, and it's like, okay, that didn't really develop at all. So basically, Trish's parents are leaving for the weekend, and they're like, they're pulling out of the driveway, and she's throwing her toys in the trash can and stuff like this. And there's that line where like Trish is like, "I'm 18 years old, remember?" Like just blatantly, just like, "Oh, let's establish how old I am." She throws away her toys, and like you just see a man's hand grab the Barbie from the trash can.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's actually one of the instances where it's like, was that the neighbor? But we know it's not. So yeah, we cut to the school where Neil and Jeff, who, by the way, throughout this movie, I think they changed names.
Okay, dude, I was gonna say, like, how did you know that guy's name was Neil? Because all that I ever have in my notes is Jeff and Guy. Like, I never even picked up that guy's name.
I believe the first word that is barely like muffled heard from Jeff is Neil, you gotta find a girl, man, or something like that.
Dude,
I only know it because of the subtitles that were on while I was watching.
Jeez. So, I didn't even notice that. Yeah, so they're at the school, and there's like a blonde lady that's on a ladder, like installing some cable or a phone line or something like that, and they go over there and try to hit on her. She's the same age as them, though.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's one of the things, again, important about this movie is the number of female characters versus the number of male characters.
Right.
There are 10 named female characters and 6 named male characters.
Right. Wow.
It kind of sticks out. I mean, especially if you're used to looking for that sort of thing in film. But it's interesting to think that even that ratio, which would seem like, that's so many more women to men, even that ratio is barely reflected in most Hollywood movies the other way. It's almost generally 5-1 men to women. I mean, look at like the Avengers or something. Like,
right,
female characters are very underrepresented, and there are far more female characters. So it's small strides for sure, but I think Jones did a good job of like trying to focus on female characters more than male characters.
Nice effort, 1982.
Yeah.
And so the handy lady there gets pulled into her work van there. A hand reaches out and grabs her.
Yeah.
And a guy in a Canadian tuxedo. What was that?
Yeah. Did you feel faked out there? Because I think I've seen so many times in slasher films where they do the like hand reaching out and grabbing and pulling a girl into a room or something like early in the film, and it's her boyfriend.
Right.
Like that's what I was expecting, was like, oh, it's gonna be her boyfriend. Nope. Already it's the killer.
And again, it's like that goes back to just throwing out that fake out about the neighbor, like literally 1 minute earlier. and
now we already see the killer, and it's not the neighbor.
Yeah, exactly. And he kills her with a kind of corkscrew power drill. He pierces her with it, a very phallic way to get murdered, which is something that is hugely important in this movie.
The drill is the thing. And I actually I looked up and worked out the history of the drill in horror movies.
What?
And and it plays to a point I have about this movie and that Amy Holden Jones has made about this movie. The first time that a drill was featured in a horror movie was a movie called Cover Up. That's the title. I can't remember the American title, but the killer in that film is a woman, and she uses a drill to kill. So
interesting.
Yeah, the next two, the toolbox murders and the driller killer, the drill is very obviously like a phallic object, like it's meant to be phallic, just like the chain in Texas Chainsaw Massacre has such like a phallic meaning in the second Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Right.
She says that she was trying to satirize slashers with this. So if you think throughout this of this as a subtle satire, she uses the drill exclusively with a male character, and it's long, like ridiculously long, and phallic, and he uses it as like a penetrative weapon predominantly.
Yeah.
Like it seems like it's satirizing the slasher killers by also showing the killer to be just a dude in a Canadian tuxedo.
Yeah, he's denim head to toe.
He's not a monster. He's not Jason. He's not, like, he's just some dude in denim.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and the thing is, too, is so many of these other slashers from this era keep the killer in the shadow, or they put him in a mask, or he's a monster.
Not this one.
Yeah, in this, he is just a guy. He's like you sitting on the couch in the movie. So yeah, they go to gym and we see a long gym scene of basketball. Girls' basketball game. All the girls are just like ridiculously attractive and wear like short shorts and all this stuff.
Yeah, they're all these cute girls, and we, I mean, we're sort of introduced to each of our characters. We've already met Trish. We see Kim. We see Diane. We see Jackie and Val.
Most importantly, Valerie, the new girl, who's kind of the teacher's pet.
Oh, and we also see the coach, who is an important character. So
right, and then it cuts to a shower scene. And
that is just blatant. Like
it's straight up like a deleted scene from Porky's, and even like the very first thing that happens is like when it cuts to the shower scene. Immediately there's a line of a girl saying, "Oh wow, did your tits get bigger?" And then it shows like an extended shot of a girl's butt, like soapy wet butt.
Yep. Yeah, it pans down to her butt.
Yeah.
Stays on it for a while and then pans back up. It's a very like exploitation film shot. It's absolutely Porky's.
And what it is, again, coming from the female director and the subtext of this movie, as a male viewer, and again, I'm trying to say this without sounding like a sexist piece of shit, but it's like, as you watch this, that's exactly how you want it to be. Like, that is the male fantasy of what a girl's shower room would be like, is attractive girls talking about how their tits are getting bigger, and then soapy, beautiful butts. It's exactly the male fantasy of what that is. Yeah,
and this film has already passed the Bechdel test because the ladies have all talked about basketball. Like they were playing basketball, it had nothing to do with men. Now they're in the shower and they're talking about sports, but when they talk about sports, it's always about how cute the guys are, which is, I mean, like, we saw them playing sports. Why not let them just say sports shit? I mean, later they're talking about baseball, like, pretty in depth. So, like, why not in the shower scene also just have them, like, just talking about baseball or basketball instead of being like, oh, I like that because the guys are cute.
And more importantly, there's a scene in here where one girl in one shower stall asks the other girl in the other shower stall if she could use her soap. And she just hands her a bar of soap. And
it's gross.
I don't know why it seems gross, but it is. Soap should be a self-cleaning kind of rig. I mean, it's soap. Yeah. But for some reason, that just seems really gross to me.
Yep.
The girls are talking about, like, having a slumber party.
Right, yeah. And Trish wants to invite Val. And this is... I love this so much because Trish wants to invite Val, and Diane, she says that she doesn't like to get to know people, or just, I don't like people that I have to get to know.
And somebody
So
in
wait,
there also
what?
says the line, "She drinks too much milk." Did you catch that?
Yeah,
What the
I
fuck
did.
does that mean?
I think because she's tall, I guess. I don't know.
know. And so they're just basically
Anyway,
talking about how like they don't want to invite Val, but then Val is on the other side of the lockers and she hears it and her feelings are kind of hurt and stuff.
I'll say this: their insults probably below the par set in the Swedish schoolgirls in the Phenomena.
We worship you.
Yeah, at least they were directing some sort of insult at her. They're just saying, well, she drinks too much milk, and I don't like people I have to get to know. What? So you don't like anybody?
And so Diane is the snob, really. That's the one that's kind of trying to like keep Valerie from getting invited to the party. But Trish,
Yeah,
who's kind of the second sort of protagonist of the movie, goes after Val and she invites her, and Val's like, "No, I can't. I gotta watch over my sister."
yeah, and so yeah, like Trish tries to help out. You know, it's she seems to be nice. Actually, all of the girls seem to be nice. Even Diane, who doesn't want her to come over, doesn't seem to be a bad person. So this again is interesting that the kids haven't done anything bad.
Right. This is not like a Carrie level kind of scheme.
Yeah. So like,
and then like it shows the slumber party girls, and they're talking about their totally not dated drugs that they have available, like poppers and uppers and ludes and
yeah, and crystal meth. He also mentions crystal meth. So it's been around for a while.
Get them teeth just falling out at this party.
Yeah.
And one of the girls ends up locked in the school, right?
Yeah, we get a good shot of the killer's perspective through the side view mirror. I like that shot.
That's important. That's important too, because I think in so many ways, the movie is trying to say the same. And again, I'll talk about this more as we go on. I think so much of this movie is trying to make you go, hey, the way that you're feeling about all these underage, bodacious ladies, and look at their butts and boobs, that's how the killer feels too.
Yeah, that's creepy. You're being creepy.
And it shows him in the mirror as though to kind of imply that. That might be me reading that into that too much, but it seems relevant.
Our first boob shot is actually a mirror shot too.
That's true. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. And so like the mirror shots are they occur a couple times, and we'll talk about later boob shots.
This movie's deeper than The Shining, dude.
Absolutely. Room 237, get the fuck out. Anyway, so Linda, she gets locked in when she goes back in to grab something from her locker in the gym. Mm-hmm. And she gets locked in with our esteemed killer, Russ Thorne.
Yeah, and he's running after her with the drill and all this stuff. He's got his power drill kind of thing. He slashes her arm and stuff. And I think something that's interesting too is like as the pursuit is going on, they run back into the shower room. Like this formerly like this room that you were so like hot and bothered by just like a minute ago.
Yeah.
And then you see the reality of like a man chasing a woman down with this phallic, very rapey weapon, and it's like, hey, is it still sexy? Do you like this now? I think it's really making you stare that down.
Yes. Yeah, I love the message behind this. And I also love none of the female characters make what I would call stupid slasher film moves.
Right.
Linda, she doesn't like just see a drill and start screaming and get killed. She runs, she hides, she like almost hides successfully. She hides behind a locked door. She's trying to like keep the blood flowing from her arm from going under the door, and she can't. She's bleeding too much, and he sees the blood under the door. Like she made no stupid move, I would say. I mean, if you were in that situation, I don't know how differently.
She didn't smooth move X-Lax that one. And then whenever the killer sees the blood leaking out from under the door, there's that ultra phallic just glory hole shot of the drill going through the door, and it kind of gives it the old in and out even a few times.
Yeah. I think I've said before on episodes, it doesn't exactly matter to me what the filmmaker intended with their film. It's what you get out of it. But Amy Holden Jones has said she intended for this film to represent the fear that women have of having sex for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And so the use of the drill and having to penetrate the door and the blood coming out from under the door, like that. Yeah, it's a good symbol, I think.
Yeah, you're right. And then we have kind of a superfluous little scene there of the coach, the basketball coach earlier, coming home, and there's a psych out where a drill comes through her door, but it's actually the handy woman Pam installing her new peephole and stuff. And it's like, that's pointless. Pam never comes back.
Well, I think what this does set up is just a slight nod to the fact that the coach is probably gay.
Yeah. There's some lesbian overtones there.
Yeah, because we see the person drilling her door is a woman.
Yeah.
And there's no man at home. She doesn't come home to a boyfriend or a husband. She comes home to look for her cat and make herself a quesadilla. So
that's true.
Like, yeah, I think there's a nod here to like a women being independent. Maybe she's not a lesbian, but at least she is independent.
She's needless of a man. We'll at least put it that way. She don't need no man. And then we get Valerie, and Valerie's on the phone. She hears the door knock, and the door is open. And then she goes and sits down and plays like the most goddamn out-of-tune piano of all time.
Oh, God. It's so horrendous.
Fuck. It's awful.
Yeah.
And somebody's in the house, but then it turns out to be the neighbor guy. And he's like, oh, just checking in on you.
Yeah, and again, this is a good thing. She hears a noise upstairs, runs to the door. Yeah. She doesn't run upstairs to check on it. She runs to the door.
Yeah.
And we see that again. It cuts back to the coach's house after that, and she like knocks over a glass. Then she hears a noise. She picks up the biggest shard of that glass, and she goes to inspect it. So like we see that throughout the movie. That
true. They're arming themselves.
Yeah, the women aren't making the dumb moves.
That's true. Actually, that the thing about her breaking the glass, that's one of those things in my notes I had crossed out because I thought it was unimportant. But you're right. She does arm herself with that. That's a good point.
Yeah.
And then we get Jeff and apparently Neil. And they're walking around the neighborhood with their bikes and stuff. And they're like, yeah, let's go by the slumber party and scare the girls. And they walk by, which they kind of use the killer's van as kind of like the Mike Myers car in Halloween, where every time you see it, it's like, oh shit, it's a car.
He's in there. Oh, also cool about this conversation is they say they're going to go scare the girls, and Jeff or Neil says, they might beat us up. And the other one says, that's true, we did flunk gym like 3 times. So the male characters shown in this are like ineffectual. Like they're not, like we're not seeing the jocks so much. I mean, we do see one jock, and that is Diane's boyfriend that we meet right after that. Yeah. His name is John.
I just have him as Ginger. I didn't even catch his name either.
Yeah. But I mean, his jockness never plays into the entirety of the film. So,
and so then Trish's the other girls arrive at Trish's place, and they have beer, and they have themselves some Maui Wowie.
Yeah, little Maui Wowie.
Damn.
You know, I wish we had recorded this yesterday on 420. Am I right, bro?
Oh, bro, blazing. Right. Maui Wowie.
Roasting a bone.
So then the neighbor guy leaves. And that's when we go back to Valerie's house. Valerie lives across the street from the slumber party, and she's making some Kool-Aid with her sister Courtney, right?
And Courtney, I think, is a super important character because in all of those exploitation movies, you always have a pervy, like 13, 14-year-old boy. And everybody in the theater is like, ha ha ha, he's wanting to have sex, etc.
He's naughty. He wants them boobies.
Right. So, with Courtney, we get exactly that, but a girl.
Yeah, you're right, actually, because she's always after some boys. And here in a second, we see her with the Playgirl and stuff.
Yeah.
That's an interesting point. Yeah, because there is always that boy who's like peeping through the hole in the fence and stuff like this. But actually, in this movie, it's the girl, which she's actually like 35, I think.
Yeah, probably.
And but I think she's supposed to be playing like 14 or so.
Yeah, seems that way. She's in between. Like, she obviously is into guys, but she's also pretending she's not a little bit. It's yeah. So she's like a young teenager.
Yeah. And we go back to the slumber party where they're all hanging out and smoking dope and stuff.
Talking shit about Diane, of course.
Just talking some mad shit about her. And then she's like at the window or something, right?
Yeah, she makes a noise at the window. It's one of the millions of jump scares in this movie.
And just the psych out jump scares where it's just like, oh, no, it's just pointless.
Yeah, and the predominant number of them, I think this is interesting. And again, this may just be that I really believe this is like a parody film. If you pay attention, the characters are not scared by the jump scares. So, like, it does like a musical sting, or it'll do like the quick flash to it, but the characters are just like, oh, hey.
I didn't notice that. And then across the street, Courtney is getting out her Playgirl with Sylvester Stallone on it.
Old Sly Stallone, yeah.
Valerie goes out because everybody wants to see fucking Sly's dick. And then it goes back to the slumber party where we see Neil and Jeff have arrived, and they're peeping on the girls from the window. Yeah. And the girl, and again, dude, this is like exactly like the shower scene where it's like if you asked a 15-year-old boy, hey, what do you think happens at a girl slumber party? He's like, I don't know. I guess they hang out and talk and like take their boobs out and stuff. And
yeah,
because it's exactly what happens in the scene. They appear in the window just as the girls are changing clothes and like taking the boobs out and stuff. And they're like staring and peeping in. And I have no idea how the girls don't notice. I mean, they're right in front of the fucking window.
It would be impossible. They would absolutely notice. I think this is the last boob scene.
I think you're right.
And I think if you pay attention to each of the 3 boob scenes, the artifice of film is called out. In the opening scene, we get a mirror shot, and it's actually like this sort of fuzzy focus. In the shower scene, it's like so prominent that like the camera freezes, hands down to the butt. Yeah, like it's so prominent. And here we see all of it through the frame of the window. So, like, I think what you're saying as to like how this movie calls out like the male gaze. Like, I think this is it. It like calls out these boob scenes as particularly for the male gaze.
And it also, I mean, by the way that you're saying it too, is as far as it. Those are the parts that makes it very obvious that it's movie magic, camera movement, and stuff like this. It's like it's showing you this is unreality. Like, girl slumber parties aren't just hot chicks.
They're not like out. That.
And girl showers aren't just girls being like, "Wow, your tits got bigger," and then soapy butts. It's like it's not really like that. It's kind of showing you, this is fucking fake, dude.
From slumber parties with my wife, I know that boobs eventually do come out at some point, but. Of course. Not all at once.
And back at the slumber party, it's so funny, dude. I'm looking at my notes, and I have so many parts where it's like, I know it's supposed to be Trish, but I have Valerie written down because they're fucking interchangeable.
Yeah.
They're both just like both attractive white brunette girls.
Yeah, they're both good girls. Like, they're not bad people. Like, yeah.
So Trish is arranging some Twinkies and Cheetos and stuff on a plate, and they talk about ordering a pizza. And Diane goes out and goes to get some logs for the fire or something like this, and we see like the image of a male hand on like a meat cleaver, and we're like, oh shit, it's the killer.
Yeah, but no, it's Mr. Compton. So why?
Because
I don't
he
understand.
Hunts snails at nighttime. At the neighbor's house with a meat cleaver, like you do.
Yeah.
Because he chops a snail in half.
Yeah, he likes to do it organically.
Why the fuck would you do that?
Well, here in the California, we get the snails, and they eat up all the nice flowers and things.
The things that are nice.
Yeah. Bastard
How often
snails.
do you go over to your neighbor's place and hunt the snails with the meat cleaver?
Oh, just on snail hunting nights. It's normally Tuesdays.
Ah, okay. I didn't know if it was like during like a lunar eclipse or something like this.
Oh, okay. You're talking about the were snail, and that is a whole different thing. But yes, the entirety of the city of LA does have to search for a person who was bitten by a snail during a full moon, who turns into a were-snail. It's everybody knows. It was in that. It was in I Love L.A., right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that
was. Yeah.
And this is an interesting thing because like Diane goes back inside with the firewood and stuff, and then the neighbor, Mr. What'd you say, Content? They say. He gets drill killed, and there's a funny thing about this because I was watching the first part of this movie with my wife, and she has the most acute gaydar of anybody on Earth.
Yes.
And the very first scene where it showed him, like at the first of the movie in the driveway and stuff.
Mr. Content.
Yeah, where it showed Mr. Content. Like my wife was like, "Oh, so he's gay, huh?"
He seems that way. Yeah, he comes off as perhaps gay. And again, he's living a bachelor lifestyle. I think I think a lot of effort was made to normalize, maybe not make gay characters, but to normalize non-family living, like a single people.
And so my wife pointed out that she thought that he was gay, and then he gets penetrated. He gets drill killed.
He does.
By the killer there, which I think is kind of a like after she pointed that, I was like, oh, well, there you go. He did get male penetrated.
Penetrated.
And that's how it should always be said. And
so that's the third kill so far.
Right.
And this is still pretty early in the movie. There's a lot of people to go.
Yes, indeed. There's just a bunch of bullshit there where they're like, oh, I hear a noise. Let's go check the garage. Okay, no, there's nothing there. It's just, but you see the killer shot. Just a bunch of bullshit.
We learned that the garage door needs to be locked, which will come into play for a couple of kills later.
Right.
But that's, again, it's just a lot of, I heard a noise. Let's go check it out. But everybody goes to check it out. That is a point I think that is important. All of the girls in the slumber party, when there's an issue, they're all like, hey, let's go together.
Right. Which is in contrast to the boys later who are like, we should split up.
Uh-huh. Exactly.
And I guess kind of the next thing of relevance is we get that shot of Courtney, the little sister, Valerie's little sister, and she's reading her Playgirl magazine, and she's eating a big old lollipop.
Yeah. Which,
again, dude, like I cannot help but think that was totally made to play into the typical male fantasy of wanting an underage girl who is still sexually awakened.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because okay, the actress is like in her mid-20s at least, but we're told over and over, oh, she's a little sister, she's underage and all this stuff, and she's sucking on a lollipop, but then she's like looking at Playgirl. It's I don't know. There's just this whole like trying to make you feel like a pedophile thing while you watch the movie.
And then also, whenever Val comes in to get her Playgirl, she picks up a banana peel.
Yeah, what?
And so there's like a banana, like she stuck a banana in her pussy joke, I guess.
Dude, that scene comes and goes in like 2 seconds, and you're like, what?
Yeah. And then she also accuses Courtney of beating off guys in 5th grade.
Yeah. What? And again,
this conversation
that's totally that thing that males want. The young girl who's sexually awakened but still young and dumb and innocent.
Yeah. I mean, that's it's an interesting play. Like I think it could make audiences uncomfortable, whereas if it were a young teenage boy, it's a joke.
Yeah, or it's hot.
Yeah. So I think it makes a good point. It's an interesting element to add for sure.
And then the lights go off at the slumber party, and the girls go out to check the fuse box. And the killer's watching them, and then it's like, oh, psych, it's the boys. It's actually not the killer, it's the boys.
Yeah, and one of them gets just cracked in the head with a flashlight because these girls don't take no shit. Like, they weren't like, oh no, they're just like, bam, like right in the head.
And so then, like right after that scene where it's like, oh, the killer's there, psych, it's the boys. Then we go to that other scene where like Valerie's outside, and Courtney jumps out at Valerie and grabs her, And you're like, it's the killer.
Yeah,
no, psych. It's just Courtney. There's two
with a
psychs
knife
fucking
for a
row.
reason.
Yeah, she has a knife.
Yep. Why does she have a knife?
And so then back at the slumber party there, what'd you say the ginger, Diane's boyfriend, the ginger guy? John, is that what you said?
John Minor is his name, yeah.
God, I just have Ginger because I never even got his name.
He's the only one with like a full name except for the killer.
Yeah. And then we have Valerie and Courtney together, and Courtney has the idea of like, oh, let's go over there and crash the party and stuff.
Yeah, but Val doesn't want to go over there. You know, even though she was invited and things, Val's got like some depth of character that we don't go into. She's obviously dealing with some issues. She's supposed to watch her sister, but she also was like embarrassed that they were going to invite her to the party, so she like tried to slip out early and like I don't know. It is interesting that the actress who played her, Robin Still, she did commit suicide. She did suffer from depression. So I don't know if the depth of her character is just the depth of her as a person coming out, that there's obviously just something weighing on her.
Damn.
But that's what it seems like throughout the movie, like that there's something weighing on Val that just probably shouldn't be, right?
Right. Damn. And then we see John and Diane, and they're making out in the car in the garage and stuff, and the other slumber party girls are in the kitchen with Jeff and Neil. And actually, there is one more boob shot while they're making out. That's the last of the boobs.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's right. Because he pulls up her shirt. That's right.
And John is like, oh, let's leave. Let's go to my parents' house. They're not home or whatever.
She goes in to, I guess, say what she's going to do.
And, dude, this is one of my favorite subtext scenes in the movie. Okay, so like
Are you talking about the hot dogs?
Fuck yeah, I'm talking about the hot dogs. So like earlier, like you said, that dude got clocked with the flashlight in the face, and the girls are in the kitchen with him.
Phallic object.
Yes. Oh, dude, yeah. And he's like, oh, I think I'm gonna have a black eye. And she's like, is there anything we can do for that? And he's like, well, if you have a steak, I could put a steak on my eye, and that'll help the black eye go away. And she's like, well, we don't have any, but we do have these. And she pulls out 2 hot dogs, 2 wieners, and tries to put them on his face. And he's like, oh, no.
Yeah. Yeah.
She wants to put wieners on his face.
Yeah. And,
And he's like, no.
That means something to him. There's like a sexual element to it. Yeah.
I love it. That's one of those, like, I thought about it later, and I was like, wait, she tried to put wieners on his face.
Yeah. We're going to talk about a stare here in a little bit too.
Oh.
But so the pizza guy shows up.
That's when Diane goes into the house to be like, hey, me and
John
are going on a beer run, and then she goes back out to the garage, and that's where John is like dead in the car. And then the killer is in the garage there, and this is when we get just like the way ultra phallic shot of like Diane is like down on the ground, like kind of
and he just raises it, or he has it like dangling between his legs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's a really like iconic shot, and just super, super, super phallic. And she's like super scared, and like the drill like extends down between his legs and stuff. And then that's when the pizza guy shows up. Yeah, and
it's impossible in space or in time that this happens.
Yes.
Because the pizza guy shows up. This cuts to that. The guys go up to the door and they say, "What's the damage?" Like before they open the door or anything. And
6 so far.
6 so far. It's Russ Thorne.
Yeah.
The 6th would be, of course, those first 3, and now Diane, John, and a guy who we discover when they open the door has had his eyes drilled out.
Although he's still standing on his feet.
Yeah.
Unlikely.
Yeah, unlikely. But, so they drag the body into the house and close the door, and they lock all the doors and windows. Smart.
Yeah.
Absolutely smart. And they begin to call 911, but he cuts the phone line.
And that before that too, though, one of the girls, I think it was Kim, she called the coach that we saw from earlier, to like learn about the
Yes.
scores from the game, and that's when like the other girls that saw the dead body scream, and so you see the coach hears the screams over the phone, and then the phone line gets cut.
Yeah, and so the coach calls Val.
Yeah.
Val and Courtney also had heard some screams.
Yeah.
And so the coach asks Val if she would go check on it, but then she changes her mind because, she's like, oh, right, I'm asking a teenager to perhaps put themselves in danger. So she drives over, but she doesn't call the cops. And my wife had a problem with this, and I don't. Let me tell you why. She seemed like a cool teacher. She seemed like the type of teacher that the kids really like and they think they can, like, talk to about stuff.
Mm-hmm.
She knows they're having a party. She doesn't want to call the cops on them. Because what if they were just giggling in the background? There wasn't some screaming, and suddenly the cops are there and they've got beer and stuff. I think it fits the character that she didn't call the cops and she just decides to drive over.
Right, yeah, exactly. And then that's when, like, the boys are like, let's split up and investigate outside and try to figure out what's going on out here. Maybe we should go to Val's and all that kind of stuff.
They have this look between them.
Yeah.
Just this, they talk about how it's the right thing to do. Now, I don't know what makes them think that the right thing to do when someone has been murdered is to leave the home that is locked up and safe. How is this right? Like,
yeah.
what?
In what world
who
is
are
that
they
the right thing
help?
to do?
Yeah. Anyway, they take knives and go separate directions.
Yeah. And one of the boys goes out to the garage, which is where we see Diane fall from the rafters, which is just a direct rip off of Halloween.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like,
absolutely.
direct. Like, I'm just sort of falling and swaying upside down from the rafters. It's exactly like that. And then that dude, I don't know if it's Neil or Jeff. Doesn't matter. He gets drilled. And he dies.
Yeah, he gets drilled.
And he gets drilled, like, from the back. It's a pretty good-looking shot. Pretty good-looking death.
Now, on the other end, pretty great. I really like this sequence. Jeff or Neil, whichever one's the other one, is running to Val's, and Val is watching a horror movie very loud, which I believe, again, that's from something. This has absolutely happened in another horror movie where she's listening to the movie really loud and she can't hear him at the door and he's trying to get in. Now,
yes. That's also very much like Halloween when Jamie Lee Curtis is like banging on the doors of her neighbors, being like, "Let me in," and nobody's letting her in and stuff. It's just directly out of Halloween. Yeah.
So Russ shows up and the Jeff or Neil, like
Neil Jeff
fight him. Neil Jeff fights him, and this tussle is great. He doesn't get to use his drill on Neil Jeff.
Yes.
He gets the knife away from Neil Jeff and then has to like fight with him to eventually stab him.
Now, there's a thing in that scene right there that you're talking about during that knife fight between Neil Jeff and the killer. And while they're fighting, it's interspersed with these shots of Val inside of her house watching a violent movie on TV.
Yes.
And there's three things that it shows during that scene. There's shots of what Val is watching on TV, and she's seeing like a violent murder scene on TV.
Yeah.
And then there's shots of her eyes watching it. And then there's shots of Neil Jeff and the killer fighting in real life with real violence and stuff. I think that scene is supposed to be directly analogous to us sitting here watching butts and boobs and lusting after these girls and thinking about what we do to them. And then also seeing on screen how horrific and awful it is when a male acts on what I would like to do to them, which is the symbolic rape killing of the drill and stuff. I think it's supposed to draw attention to that.
Yeah, it seems that way. That's well reasoned. I like that.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
I thought that was a really, like, that's probably about the most, like, I think kind of deep thoughts scene in there, you know?
It's an interesting idea too that she's watching an film adaptation of a death, and right outside her door there's an actual death occurring.
Exactly. And what we're watching in this movie is film adaptations of sex and perviness and stuff from the male perspective, and then also in the movie we see the reality of it.
Yeah,
of how
great.
It's not sexy or glamorous or anything like that.
Yeah,
this might just be the thoughts of a man that lives with like the most mega feminist wife of all time.
That's awesome. I listen. My wife, she would be a feminist if I'd let her. I feel like. Listen, I'll read the feminism and I'll tell you what you need to hear.
Yeah.
How about that? No, my wife is an ardent feminist, as is her mother, as is my mother and my grandmother. I was raised by some hardcore ladies, so
yeah, same, man.
Okay, so the girls are sitting, and I love this. This is actually almost absolutely like mimicked later in a Community Halloween episode. The girls are sitting back to back to back with the protection of a wall nearby, no nearby windows or anything.
Mm-hmm.
And they all have knives. And they when there was an episode of Community where they all told horror stories, and Abed's horror story was, of course, overly logical. And that's what this is. Like, it's super logical. This is what you would do. You wouldn't like go looking. And so what happens is the girls, they hear a knocking at the door, and it's Neil Jeff, one of whoever was drilled in the garage.
I think it's Jeff.
He survived. He's drug himself to the door, and he's trying to get them to open the door, but he can't like cry out, and they think it's the killer, so they don't do anything.
Right. Okay.
And he dies, and it's interesting, like a pretty brutal scene.
Val finds Courtney, who's like playing dad out there for some reason.
Yeah. And she's like, oh, I guess they're not home because Val knocked on the front door and they didn't answer. Oh, that's after the girls run upstairs and barricade themselves in the upstairs bedroom.
There you go.
And
that's right.
Yeah, and they hear her knocking downstairs. And Jackie thinks, she is going to get killed and she wants to, like, help her. And she runs down, and running downstairs, of course, gets her drilled.
Right.
She opens the door, and there's Russ, because Val and Courtney have already, moved on.
Right. And there's just kind of like, there's a whole bunch of kind of cat and mouse in this stuff where it's like,
yeah,
the killer comes in through the window, and then like Trish hits him with a bat or something, right?
Yeah, and him gets killed, it's drilled. Trish hits him with a bat. Trish runs. Russ goes downstairs, and Courtney is hiding under a couch.
Yeah.
Russ covers himself to pretend to be a corpse because I guess he knows the coach is coming somehow.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was kind of weird. He like drags the dead pizza guy out and then puts himself under the blanket. Yeah, it's very weird.
Coach shows up, and there's a scuffle with the coach and the and Russ, and Trish runs in and just stabs the shit out of him.
Yeah.
After Courtney trips him, Trish runs in and stabs the shit out of him. And the tells Trish to run. Trish runs, and Val is downstairs in the basement at this point.
Oh, dude, it's so dumb.
Yeah.
And I'll point out, before all that stuff happens, there's also one of my favorite scenes in there where, for some reason, Val and Courtney are in the slumber party house, and they're by the fridge.
Oh, yeah, and Courtney keeps in the fridge saying she's going to, like, look for a beer, and Kim, her dead body is in the fridge, so she opens the fridge, but they are not looking in the fridge, so the body sort of falls out.
There's clearly no shelves in that fridge. Like, you can't fit a whole corpse in a fridge. If there's usually shelves in there. That's not possible.
But it is some good comedy.
But
I
then
mean,
what I like about that too, again, there's more like male pervy stuff in that scene because Courtney wants to get a beer from the fridge and Val goes, she's like, Courtney, everybody knows you're underage. And then the
yeah,
camera just like pans on her butt.
that's true.
On her
Yeah.
like underage butt. Just to make you feel gross about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I guess. I don't know.
I guess. Okay.
I know
so
I did.
This I think is a very important, funny moment in this. Val is in the basement. The coach is now dead.
She's
Trish
the
has
Scatman
stabbed.
Crothers of the movie for sure. The coach is.
Yeah, she is. Yeah, exactly. We see. Yeah, it's absolutely the Scatman. We see like her traveling a long way and then basically just getting killed. Val's in the basement and she's looking for a weapon and she sees a circular saw. She grabs it and turns it on and starts running up the stairs, and then the cord of the saw yanks her and pulls her back.
It's like Looney Tunes. It goes boing.
It's so funny.
It's fucking stupid. It's like, God, dude, it's so dumb. Like that's one of those moments of just extreme dumbness.
It's so funny though, like because I mean, most people, if you saw a circular saw, they wouldn't think about the fact that it has to be plugged in.
Yeah.
It's not a gas-powered circular saw.
This is powered by a Tesla coil.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, so she then finds a machete, which is, it's a great slasher weapon.
Classic.
Finds a machete, and she goes to, help out. Now,
and that's when we get the killer. The first time that we hear him talking, and he's talking to Trish, who he's about to kill, right? And he lays out this monologue, dude. It is just like it is the epitome of what this movie is trying to say to the male viewer.
Yeah,
he says like, and he's actually like pretty turbo creepy. He's like, "You're so pretty. All of you are very pretty. I love you. It takes a lot of love for a person to do this."
Yeah, it's some neckbeard shit. Like
and the thing is like that's what again.
Yeah.
The male viewer is feeling this whole movie when he's seeing underage girls' butt and shower scenes and slumber party boobs. It's just like, oh, they're all so pretty. Wow. Ooh.
Right. Yeah.
It's showing you that it's like, hey, by the way, this is you. Like all these thoughts you've been having this whole movie. This is what you look like.
Again, I think absolutely very smart move on Jones's part to take Roger Corman's requirement of nudity and turn it into something that like means something.
Yeah. And then he's like, you want it. You love it. Yes.
Yeah. It's creepy. It's creepy shit.
And that's when like Valerie appears and like the killer runs outside to the pool. She's got the machete and stuff.
And she fucking chops his drill bit in half with a machete. There's no symbolism
castrates him.
Yeah, she castrates him. It's absolutely clear. Like she just cuts his dick in half.
And then he like looks at the drill bit that's cut in half at like how puny and ineffective it is, and he's like, wah, wah.
Yeah, and then she cuts off his hand,
and it is weirdly brutal.
She hacks it off. Just hacks that hand.
It's
great.
It's not like a Mrs. Voorhees 1/ lopped off kind of thing. Like there's a few quick cuts, literally, of her hacking at his hand like 3 or 4 times, and he's like screaming bloody murder. And
yeah,
it looks pretty. It's pretty disturbing looking. It's the kind of thing that like really kind of jarred me awake whenever it happened because like, oh god damn, like that's actually pretty brutal. And it's yeah.
And if pay attention to the kills up to this point, the kills that have been the most graphic are the time where Neil Jeff gets killed in front of Val's house and the killer himself being killed. Yeah. Everything else, we don't exactly see what happens.
No.
But in these instances, the 2 men getting killed, they're the most... And in fact, actually, the other Neil Jeff, his killing is very graphic because he survived the first drilling. Like,
yeah. He just dies of natural causes.
yeah, like the spectacle we're seeing is the men being killed graphically, and the women die, but we don't see so much of it.
You know, another movie that does that only to a way more extreme level and reversed is Miike Takashi's Ichi the Killer.
Uh-huh.
Have you seen that?
Yeah. Yeah.
That movie,
Yeah.
that's one of those we could do like a damn 5-hour show on, because it is
Yeah.
fucking crazy. But like in that movie, it is ridiculously violent. But it's like all of the male deaths are almost like cartoonish.
Uh-huh.
And then like the female, like the violence towards the females in the movie is just
Yeah.
like hard to watch, brutal. It's fucking
Yeah.
awful. Kind of similar to that. You're right. Yeah, like the male deaths in this movie are definitely the most brutal. And so she chops his hand off and like slashes his belly, and he falls into the pool. And she
A lot
does
of blood in the pool.
Yeah, and she does the horror movie trope. She throws the machete down, and then Courtney shows up, and they hug and stuff. And the killer, Russ, like he comes up stub first out of the pool.
Yeah, that was cool. I like that. That was a
Yeah,
good shot.
I too. And then Trish arrives, and the killer is like about to like jump on Valerie, but she grabs the machete, and he is finally, his undoing is being penetrated and impaled.
In a very sexual posture.
And he goes, oh,
like,
oh.
Yeah, her on bottom, large, like erect machete.
Yeah.
He falls on it, like impales himself on it. Yeah, and he moans.
Hoisted on his own petard. And then the girls are just kind of laying there crying as the killer's dead, and you hear police sirens, and that's where the movie wraps up.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and, you know, we covered that in a little bit less time than the actual movie. The movie's only like an hour and 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And could have been shorter, certainly.
I mean,
like,
seriously, like, you can sum up the movie in like 2 sentences.
Yeah.
It's really an extremely simplistic plot. And like I said, it's one of those that, like, you know how, like, whenever you watch, okay, like, let's say whenever you watch, like, This Is Spinal Tap, while you're sitting there, you don't really laugh that much out loud while you're just sitting there watching it. But then when you get together with your friends and you're like, oh, it goes to 11 and fucking you can't dust for vomit. Like, you laugh about it in the afterthought.
Yeah.
Like, I've had way more fun talking about this movie with you than I did watching it. It's one of those that's it's way more fun to discuss than it is to watch.
Yeah. I would agree. I mean, I've seen it several times in my life. I've found enjoyment in it by knowing the context and whatnot. I think to get a sense of Amy Holden Jones could have been Joe Dante. She could have been any of these other directors that came through Corman and directed a few horror movies and moved on to bigger and better things. She could have been that, and she would have been, absolutely. In fact, could have been even bigger had she been given the chance to direct Mystic Pizza. The movie she wrote, it's a movie that was, I would say, seemingly maliciously given to a director who had no experience when she had already directed 2 feature films.
She got DeVos on that one.
Yeah, she did. So it's interesting to see like what she did with this small budget, with inexperienced actors, with not a lot of time to shoot, and with a script that, you know, she overhauled completely. So again, like as you said, watching the movie itself is not great. So if I'm giving this a rating, I gotta go maybe 4.
Yeah,
it's certainly better than a ton of slasher films out there, but it's also not as good as a whole lot more slasher films. So
yeah, I agree. I mean, because really, you could take a movie like, honestly, like a movie like Halloween has a really similar premise where it's just like there's a killer who wants to kill some people, and so he does, and that's basically the plot. And somehow it's way more fun to watch than this is. I'm with you. In terms of like watching fun, I would say like 3 out of 10.
Mm.
But subtext fun and talking fun, this is like a 7 or 8 out of 10.
Oh yeah,
I
yeah.
mean,
There's so much to it.
To me, really, one of the really defining things about this flick, especially the way it's paced and stuff like this, and what they show you, and what you feel as a horny male watcher watching this movie, it's the whole movie while you're watching all these like beautiful girls, because that's the thing, dude. There's no girls in this movie that aren't ridiculously hot. They're all
they're all pretty. Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
The coaches, the teachers, like everybody is hot.
Everybody's very pretty. Yeah.
And so basically the whole movie, you're going, oh man, wow, they're all so pretty. Wow, I love that chick. Wow.
Uh-huh.
And then one of the last things, after you've really gotten, into the movie there, one of the last things that happens with the killer is he basically voices your thoughts. He goes, you're all so pretty.
Yeah.
I love you. You know you want it.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really cool thing to do, because that happens so late in the movie that like you're already so entrenched in your own, dirty thoughts about all these girls, and then you watch that. Oh, the bad guy agrees with me,
Uh-huh.
and it makes you feel a special sort of shame, doesn't it?
I think that's a good thing to bring out from slasher films, is that slasher films are known for showing the killer's point of view, and therefore making the audience the killer.
Right.
Now, we don't identify with the killer. We're just seeing through his vision, etc. But here we're forced. If you're watching the film exploitation point of view, you're watching it just to see boobs,
right,
and to see gore,
pretty girls.
See pretty girls. You're seeing all this, and then it's just like it's labeled for you what it is that you're doing.
Yeah, it tells you what you're doing exactly.
Yeah.
I like that
I think
very much, and I can't relate that to really any other movie I've seen where it calls out the viewer. It says, hey, this is you being a pervert, by the way.
This is you. This is how you talk.
Which is part of why it's so interesting that the killer is so ordinary looking, because you're so ordinary looking. It's like, you don't look like Mike Myers. You don't look like Freddy Krueger. You look like this guy. He's just a guy wearing denim. It's like, that could be anybody.
You look like an average height white male.
And you have the same thoughts as him. They're pretty. You want it,
Yeah.
I like that.
Okay. Yeah, I like it too. And also, I would heap tons of praise on this movie and say that definitely check out. There's a documentary called Nightmare in Red, White, and Blue, which is about the rise of the American slasher film.
Yeah, and
it's great. It's a really great documentary. And also talks about this movie, and Amy Holden Jones is consulted throughout. And I think those documentarians treated Jones as she should be treated, as one of the important early slasher filmmakers, specifically for giving us a true female vision of a slasher film. Instead of just she could have just given us a slasher film where there's a final girl. I mean, in this there are 3 final girls,
right?
Where there's only one final girl, and there's a lot of drug use and sex, and people making stupid moves, and that would have sold just fine. I mean, this movie made money off a $200,000 budget, so any changes it wouldn't have made it make more money. She was able to make a good an okay version of a slasher and introduce some new ideas into the slasher film genre.
What movie would you like to watch for our next episode there, Steven?
Well, I think we agree that next time we're gonna watch High Tension.
High Tension, which is
the 2004 Alexandra Aja. Is that how his last name is pronounced?
Take
AJA?
On Me.
Another Take On Me reference.
Or is it like the Steely Dan record Aja? I don't know.
You know what? I'm gonna go with Steely Dan.
I'm gonna go with Steely Dan.
Yeah.
I fucking love Steely Dan, man.
So High Tension is not a film I have seen, so...
And this is, I think this is probably a first for the show where, like, as I've discussed, me being kind of a late bloomer to horror and Steven being a lifelong horror guy, it's not often that I have seen a horror movie that Steve hasn't. But I watched this movie probably about, I don't know, 8 or 9 months ago. I watched it on Showtime, I think, like the Showtime Go app.
Showtime at the Apollo?
Showtime at the Apollo is what I watched.
Were people booing it?
Yes. People were booing. Sandman was there, all kinds of stuff.
Came and swept it off.
Exactly.
Yep.
You know how he does. And I think it's fucking badass. And actually, it is also a female-centric movie. So that's something that will kind of continue our theme here. I guess we kind of did The Witch, then Exorcist. Now we got Slumber Party, then High Tension. It's awesome as shit. It's also ridiculously brutal at times. It's what, French, right?
Yes, it is French.
And the version that I've watched was it was dubbed, which I think might bug some people, but being a fan of all the Italian horror stuff, which is all dubbed, I'm totally fine with it. So it didn't bug me at all.
Yeah, I'm excited. I have not watched it. Actually, the reason I think I haven't seen it is because I used to be Mormon. Didn't watch R-rated movies when I was Mormon.
God, it's true.
I know, and I was serving my mission when this movie came out. I was in the land of Russia.
Russia. Oh my God, man, that's awesome. So you had a multitude of reasons to not see High Tension, but now we're
super excited though.
Yeah, I can't wait for you to watch it because it's one of my favorite horror flicks from this side of the millennium.
All right. And this will prove to those kids once and for all that we know the 21st century happened.
Fuck yeah. It exists.
Assholes.
Just because we didn't grow up in it doesn't mean it didn't happen. Jesus.
Anyway.
Well, where can they find us on them internets to get in touch with us and all that jazz?
Well, you can always email us at deadandlovelypod@gmail.com. Or you can find us on Twitter or Instagram at deadlovelypod.
Deadlovelypod.
We also have a Facebook group, I believe.
Yes, that's true. And I'd also like to implore all of you guys to please go on iTunes and rate and review this podcast with your kindest words. It makes us show up in the search engines much, 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 much better if we have a high rating. So please go through iTunes, rate and review the podcast. Be sure in your review, here's a little thing about iTunes. Be sure in your review to not like use any vulgar language. Like you can't even say damn or like cock or anything like that. So you can't say, I love the damn cocks off of these guys. iTunes won't post it and won't rate it if you use profanity. So be clean. You guys can follow me on the Instagram and Twitter at Ben Eller Guitars, and you can check out my YouTube guitar channel on youtube.com/Ben Eller Guitars.
And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Steven Spratling. That's Steven with a V. Check me out on Facebook. I don't know, Tumblr maybe.
I've checked you out. You look good.
Hey, how you doing?
You joeyed me.
How you doing? Yeah, exactly.
All right, well, you guys stay tuned next time for our High Tension episode. In the meantime, be sure to drop us an email and write us a review and stuff. Thank you guys so much for listening. You guys have been great. We have been dead and lovely.
Goodbye.